Good morning. This is Larry Straub, and wanted to welcome you to week 5 and chapter 5 of ethical decision making. And before we do that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the discussion board topic for this week. I think I might have mentioned when we started this class that I wasn't going to be lobbing you any softballs. We're going to be looking at some really tough, really challenging ethical issues as we go through this class. And this week is another example of that. This discussion board topic is one of the biggest ethical issues that we face today. It's a big political issue, and it's going to be a cultural and societal issue as well, and that's on healthcare. And to set this up, I've got a video, and I've got it listed on the syllabus, you can see, and I will also post it as a supplemental video for my weekly video post, so you'll be able to grab it there as well. It's called Healthcare, Is It a Right or a Luxury? And it's a TED Talk. It was done actually, I think, in Australia. But many of the issues are very similar, and I thought it was a pretty interesting and pretty intriguing talk. So I just went ahead and included that. But looking at this issue, just is healthcare a right or a luxury? The way the debate is framed many times today in this environment is it's a right. It's a basic human right. Well, if it is, then what level of care is a basic human right? And then should there be supplemental care that would be considered more of a luxury, that not all of the masses are going to be have access to or have availability to? And if you look to our neighbor in the north and some of the and England and some of the areas that everybody says that we should compare ourselves to, I think many times that's what happens is you have a issue where yeah, you have access to everything, you can get everything, but there's a pretty long waiting line, and sometimes it can take weeks or even months, maybe even a year or so before you have access to certain care. So you may have access to it, but can you wait long enough to be able to access it? And then are there preferential treatment? Are celebrities and connected individuals, business people, politicians, can they somehow buy themselves to the front of the line? It doesn't take too much imagination to think that that could happen as well. So anyway, so there's a huge tug of war right now whether we should have a single payer system and the government pays it all, kind of a Medicare, Medicaid for all type setup. And then there are others that think it should be private. Now, another big issue is, should there be pre-existing conditions? Should pre-existing conditions be allowed to play into whether somebody has access to health care? And as an ex-business executive who had a family business, and we provided health care for all of our employees, I will tell you that I'm firmly in the camp of, I hope they never go back to allowing pre-existing conditions. That was one big, really good thing that I felt like Obamacare did for healthcare, was do away with pre-existing conditions, because it can literally box people out of healthcare. And sometimes it's just luck of the draw. I mean, you've got a family member, you got maybe even a child that has some type of a congenital or debilitating disease. It could happen to any member of your family. And then if you lose a job, or, you know, there are even companies out there that might fire you because you're getting too expensive on their health care. They shouldn't be, they're not legally allowed to, but there's a lot of different ways you can get around that if you're devious enough. Then you got to go out and try to find another job. And the first thing that we always used to have to ask everybody before Obamacare was, do you have a pre-existing condition? And the insurance company could choose not to let them on your plan. it was not a great deal. And so anyway, I do hope that we don't ever go back to those days with pre-existing conditions. So anyway, this discussion board topic is healthcare a right or a luxury? And if it is a right, what levels of care do we have a right to? Is it appropriate that people in the past, is it appropriate that people have in the past and will in the future pay for additional care that many can't afford? That happens in Canada. That happens in a lot of places that have more socialized medicine. Is you'll have people that will fly over to the United States or come over the border to the United States and get care that they could probably get in their own country, or at least get it quicker than they could in their own country. I don't know that you can really stop that without major restructuring of systems. And finally, and this is a real tough one, should your healthcare options be limited based on bad life choices? So tobacco, alcohol, vaping, things like that. If you drank yourself silly and you ruin your liver, should the government have to pay for you to have another one? Same thing with other tobacco, lung cancer, things like that. So anyway, there's a lot of big issues that surround healthcare. So this is an opportunity to kind of explore those a little bit. And you may not know exactly what you think on these issues. And you know what you might think today might change 5 years from now, because circumstances change. And you may know somebody in the next 5 years that has a particular issue, and it may change your perspective on things. But this is just a kind of a one-time shot, and just want everybody to kind of take a look at that a little bit. Okay, I wanted to talk about a few things on the chapter, ethical decision-making. The framework for understanding ethical decision-making, there's about 4 things that go into it: the ethical issue intensity, some of the individual factors that frame ethics, organizational factors, and opportunity. So we'll look at these a little bit and explore these in a little bit more detail. The intensity of an ethical issue depends on a couple things. One is the relevance of an event or decision in the eyes of an individual, work group, and or organization, and the other reflects the ethical sensitivity of an individual or group in facing the ethical decision-making process. So, one thing that just popped up this last week, which is interesting, is we're going to be, we lost a Supreme Court justice in Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Well, that brings a real ethical issue into the fray. It's a political issue, but some would say it's also an ethical issue. Is this close to an election, should Trump and the Republican Party and the Senate push through a new Supreme Court nominee? Now, I'm not going to get into the weeds on this politically, but it is a little bit of an interesting issue. We're very close to the election, and obviously the Republicans in 2016 took the stance that Barack Obama shouldn't be doing that in the last year of his office, even though the justice that was lost back in 2016 was Scalia in February, and this is Ruth Bader Ginsburg in late September. And so it's much closer to the election, but the Republicans are already backpedaling on their previous stance. Now, again, is this just a political issue or is this an ethical issue? You're going to see it argued both ways, and many folks are going to be arguing very intensely that this is an ethical issue, and it's unethical for the Republicans to move at this point. The Republicans obviously will probably take, or many of them will take an opposite stance on that. So we won't get into the weeds of trying to decide that ourselves right now, but just going to be a very intense issue, and many people will frame it ethically. Individual factors that can impact ethical decisions are some of what you're seeing down below: gender, education, nationality, age, locus of control, whether you feel like things should be controlled more individually or as groups or society. And so, again, all of these you will see in play almost daily right now. Gender, nationality, age in particular, and race are obviously big in the mix right now. So we'll see all that play out. Organizational factors can depend on the corporate culture, the ethical culture of an organization, the significant others or the folks that you might have as stakeholders. And then obviously another one is obedience to authority. So some people might think if I work for an organization, I park my ethics at the door because it comes down to more the ethics of the organization. And I'm just a cog in the wheel. And if I get to where I don't feel like I can abide by their ethical decisions, then I've got a choice to make. I leave the organization or I stay, one way or the other. But I'm probably not going to impact the ethics of the organization very much. And I shouldn't necessarily try to. What is the ethical culture and the corporate culture of an organization? Do they view ethics as much of a framework to be considered, or is it strictly what is best for the return on investment and the shareholders? Opportunity, the conditions in an organization that limit or permit ethical or unethical behavior. And we've seen a lot of this in the last couple of decades, from the Enron scandal to 2008 economic meltdown, which was brought about by, many people would say, a lot of unethical conduct on the part of a lot of big corporations and even some of the federal agencies. So what types of opportunities are there that permit people to behave unethically, or, in the most desirable cases, formal codes, rules, and policies that keep them from committing unethical behavior. There's decision-making models that can help people improve their ethical decisions. One decision-making model is on an individual level is what I suggested all of you to do a mission statement. And that's why I feel like mission statements, personal mission statements, and even organizational mission statements are very important to organizations, because they are ethical decision-making models. They help you say in advance what is acceptable and what's not acceptable before the temptation is there, before the pressures to bear are there. So, and so having those decision-making models kind of helps us predetermine, pre-agree on frameworks and how we're going to make ethical decisions. Normative considerations and ethical decision making examines what the ideal standards should be in ethical decision making within the firm and as well as an industry. Normative rules and standards are based on individual moral values and the collective values of the organization, or again, a larger industry. You'll see many industries, finance might be an example, for example, that have collective morals and rules of ethical decisions. If you're a CPA, for example, that would be another one where it's very ingrained what are ethical decisions and where the boundaries are on those. Organizations operate based on institutional norms and values, and so again, it's important as you look at jobs and you look at careers, particularly jobs, that when you interview for companies, that you make it a two-way interview. You maybe find out what's important to them and find out how they deal with ethics and how they encourage employees to deal with ethics. Do they have an organizational mission statement? Do they have an organizational code of conduct? Do they have whistleblower protections? You know, things like that, that demonstrates to you that they take ethics and morals seriously in their organization. The nature of competition can be shaped by the economic system and the normative systems that are out there, and particularly in industries. Many times industries will have code of conducts for the entire industry. And so it's important to be attentive to and pay attention to that. And companies can convert basic principles into core values. And core values provide the abstract ideas that are distinct from individual values and daily operational procedures. They include operating in a sustainable manner, collaboration, teamwork, and avoiding bribery, and providing a blueprint into a firm's goals and how it views ethical decisions. Again, if you look at an organization, especially any organization of any size, and they don't have mission statements, they don't have codes of conduct, they don't talk about what their core values are, I would see that as a red flag and give me pause, at least make me look deeper and look more into that organization. This shows kind of the differences between principles and values. This is in your book and in your and in the PowerPoints that I have on Canvas, so you can look at that at your leisure. Understanding ethical decision making. Top-level support for ethical behavior is instrumental in helping employees engage in their personal approaches to ethical decision. Much of ethics in organizations and business really does flow from the top down. It flows from many times the board level down and then through the CEO. And so you really have to look at what you feel like top-level leadership is about and what their ethics and their morals are about. Knowledge about ethical decision-making helps in making good decisions. That's why taking business ethics class and also a general ethics class, possibly at Newman, are very, very good things to do. They make you think about what are good ethical frameworks, what are good decision-making models. They make you think about how do I position my life individually to make sure that I have the best chance of being an ethical and a moral person during the duration. So keep in mind that ethics, even though it seems kind of touchy-feely and kind of fuzzy and nebulous, it really is concrete. And it's so concrete, in fact, that you see entire lives and careers that are destroyed because people go off the pathways. They go off their moral and ethical pathways, and they get way off into the weeds, and it can get them into all sorts of trouble and cause all sorts of problems for other people. You know, think Bernie Madoff, think about Enron and all of the lives and the people they destroyed in the process when a few key players decided to go in their own direction, in their own way, and move away from their ethical frameworks if they ever had them in the first place. Okay, that is, I think, it for this week. Again, I hope you're finding the discussion boards of value. I hope you feel like they're helping you think through some of the things that are important that we should be paying attention to. I don't expect everybody at the tender age of being in college to necessarily have your answers all figured out on these things, and what you think now might change, and it may change in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's okay. One of the things that I think is the most ridiculous thing about politics now is the way that candidates get tagged as flip-floppers. That this candidate is on the record as saying this about a specific, especially moral and ethical issue 20 years ago, and now he's saying just the opposite of that. So we can't trust him. We can't trust his judgment because he's a flip-flopper. Well, keep in mind with politics, what's that saying? What that ultimately is saying is big money, which is what there's a lot of in politics right now. They don't like flip-floppers because they want to know exactly what they're paying for when they put money in a campaign. They want to make darn sure that whatever somebody's saying up front, they're not going to change their stance on. And I understand that to a certain extent. I get that. But in terms of a political candidate that somebody says he was saying this 20 years ago and now he's saying this and that means he can't be trusted or she can't be trusted, that's absolutely ridiculous. I will guarantee you there are ways I viewed things 20 years ago that I view completely differently today. And why is that? Why would that happen? Why can that happen? Well, I'll tell you how it happens. I viewed things differently before I had kids. I viewed things differently before I had aged parents. I viewed things differently before my parents died. You know, I viewed things different before I was married, you know. So all of these big life events that happen in your lives, they're going to change the way you view the world. They're going to change the way you think. The older you get, traditionally, the more conservative you get. You may be a far left-wing progressive liberal at 18, but by the time you're 50 or 55, you might be voting Republican. You might be a member of the Republican Party. It happens all the time. It's because you have more life experience. You're looking at things now through the rearview mirror, and you have more life experiences. And so you see some of the things, plus you're a little higher. You're looking at things from a 10,000 and a 30,000 foot view. So it's not unusual for you to change stances as you go through life. It's actually a healthy process. It shows that you're learning, you're spreading your wings, and you're growing as an individual and as a person. And you're going to change your perspectives based on being on the job and having a career and working in different industries. It happens, and it's going to happen. So don't view that as a weakness. Everybody tries to make that sound like a weakness right now. You should not look at the world the same at 60 as you did at 18. That means you've just been in a stagnant state your whole life and you've never grown, you've never evolved as a person. Now, it could probably go the other way. You might be a card-carrying Republican in your early 20s and 30s, and then as you see more of life, it could kick you more on the Democratic or the liberal side of things. I've seen that happen with people too, because of the experiences that they've had. So anyway, that's part of normal growth. You will change the way you look at things. You will change even how you view things ethically and morally as you go through life. It just happens. Okay, well, that's enough for today. I will stop blathering on, and I hope you all have a great week. The numbers, everything continues to look good for Newman University. All the mask wearing, everything that we're doing seems to be really working, and we're in our 5th week, so let's keep up the good work. Let's keep doing what we've been doing, and I think Kansas as a whole, and even Wichita, is looking much better. The numbers and everything right now, so all of this seems to be working, seems to be effective, so let's keep it up. All right, thanks, be safe, and we'll talk to you next week.